Your voice is your superpower. Think about it. Are you using it to your full potential? Well, today we're going to talk about the power of communication, navigating the corporate and educational spaces. It's all about effective communication right here on Girl Talk.
If I find my way home, yeah. Wouldn't it be crazy? Don't you still amaze me? Wouldn't it be crazy? Don't you still amaze me? Wouldn't it be crazy? Don't you still amaze me? Wouldn't it be crazy? Don't you still amaze me? If I find my way home, yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Girl Talk, where every voice matters and every story inspires. And today we're going to get into a great topic that impacts all of our lives, and that's, guess what? Communication. So I am so thrilled to have an expert here who's going to dive into this topic that we're going to unpack for you guys today. And think about it. Even when you're in the boardroom, you're talking to a loved one, you're talking to a friend, a coworker, or whomever communication is involved. There are some techniques and some things that you need to remember in order to have effective communication. So that's why this beautiful woman is here right now that you see on the screen, Miss Michele Gilliam Morrissey. Welcome to Girl Talk, girl. Thank you for coming in.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. LaDonya. I am pleased to be here. Can't wait to dig in.
Awesome. So tell our audience a little bit about who you are and exactly what it is that you do.
Okay, Michele Gilliam Morrissey. I am the CEO of Lucidity Communication Consultants. And although I do definitely support communication and presentation skills, my love is interpersonal skills and talking about the communication that is beneath the communication. Dr. LaDonya, even when you think about communication, it seems simple, but we all know it's not simple because we've seen it fail miserably up close at some point in our lives.
Oh, yeah.
That's because it's very complex. And even in a seemingly simple dialogue, there are 6 things happening. Even right now, I'm thinking about myself. I'm thinking about you. And I'm thinking about you thinking about me. Right?
Right.
And where do you think, I don't mean to turn this around. I know you're interviewing me, but where do you think most people get hung up?
I know. Oh, so what is that?
Yeah. What is it? It's called theory of mind.
Wow.
And it is how we assess our environment to know what's going on. Because we also want to know what's happening, what's going to happen, and how we are being treated. And
so that's kind of like I'm feeling you out, you feeling me out.
Yes. Yeah, we have to, because we have to determine whether or not we're aligned. So really, it is all about social connection and survival.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. Okay. That's some good stuff. And that's another way, another perspective on how to look at it. So there's so much to this communication thing. I mean, you would just never think how effective it can be and how useful it really can be for the interaction of people, or multiple people, even speaking to people, right? So in order to dive into a little bit deeper and get you to know you just a little bit better, what inspired you to become a speech language pathologist, and particularly with the corporate and educational setting?
So I had a great role model. I'm fortunate enough to have grown up with my heroes around me. I didn't have to look to celebrities, etc. My celebrity, my mama, was the first example I saw of a speech language pathologist. She was the first Black speech language pathologist in Columbus, Georgia. So, I try to say that I have Southern roots, by way of Columbus. So that was my role model for that. Communication was something that was really prized in our home. My father was an instrumental music teacher, so it had that educational just drive and influence from everything in our upbringing, and communication being a part of that.
Wow.
I knew when I went off to Hampton University that I wanted to be in a helping profession, and just having that model before me, I was drawn to it. So that's how I got to education. And even within the educational settings, when I saw dynamics among adults, I just felt like I would sit back and observe and see the conversation beneath the conversation. I would see people talking over one another, and I would say, can I tell you what she probably felt when this happened? So it's something that kind of just seemed to be intuitive. And even as I secured one of my first contracts with a DoD contractor, I just saw so much that had to do with personality differences that people didn't understand. And then personalizing other people's personalities. And then also seeing all that I knew about learning disabilities and ADHD play out in the workspace, where there was one individual, he just turned red when I administered a writing task. And so I kind of rescued him, and I went over and I just started talking to him, and just had a hunch that it was really about challenges around writing. And then there was another young lady in the room who self-disclosed that she had issues with ADHD, and I was able to offer some supports and accommodations within that. And DoD stands for Department of Defense. Within that DoD setting, to say, number one, she has disclosed, so you can't just fire her, or you're going to get sued because she's protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And the other thing is, again, I was able to supply accommodations to help support her in the workplace.
Wow, you've done you have quite the journey. It's amazing, because often we think of communication as just just words, but it's so much more than that. Is body language, is the tone of your voice, is just everything you say without even speaking the word is communication, right? So how can you break it down a little bit in components of effective communication? Break effective communication down just a little bit.
Well, let's start with something that people think is really easy, which is listening. So there are actually 4 levels of listening. Although I talked about those 6 elements of communication,
Right.
there are four levels of listening. So first is really just the auditory perception. Like, what are we taking in? Just listening, being that marginal listener. You really are not dug in. You might just be being polite. You might look like you're attentive, but your mind is not there, right? Which takes me to the next level that I call, your body is here with me, but your mind is on the other side of town. So if you're Gen X, you understand.
I like that.
And then the next level of listening is called evaluative listening. And this is what a lot of people do. I call that level, I'm waiting for you to shut up so I can tell you what I want
you better come on, Michele.
I want you to do. That's not what we want to do.
Right.
We want to be that 4th level, and we call that empathic or empathetic listening, where you are doing something hard, Dr. LaDonya. You are suspending your own judgment.
Okay.
And even if you think you have the nuggets of golden truth, you are going to suspend that and have the mindset, I do not hold the truth, but together we are going to work to discover the truth. Because when people feel like they have connectivity and buy-in, then they're open to influence.
Yeah.
Because communication is typically driven by one of 3 things: to either connect with someone, to relate information, and to influence. And often we are trying to push information or even influence somebody. And that could be a sales conversation. That could be an unsolicited opinion. We're doing that before we have really connected with someone, so that they have that sense of interpersonal trust and they know that you respect them, or before we relay information. And we see that every day on social media. When people might put something out and somebody comes back with a strong opinion and the original poster gets really offended, that's because somebody has pushed some strong emotion on them, or an unwelcomed opinion, without really establishing that connection. And connection is everything.
I that comes up quite often, and I think it's going to keep coming up quite often in this conversation, because communication is actually connecting with people. If you don't have a connection, how is the communication going to flow the way it needs to go if there's no communication connection in the communication. That is that's a great nugget that you just said right there. And I'm glad you brought up like social media and the digital world of communication, because so many of us, we rely on emails, text messages, whatever digital platform of communication there is that's out there. And there's a plethora of it out there. People have their own communication language, right? Or their preference, right? Or I'd rather you email me, or I'd rather you text me, or send me a message on Teams, or something like that. A lot of people prefer not to have that face-to-face conversation. That's their preference. So since you brought that up, how can professionals, Michele, ensure they communicate clearly and effective in the written form, like a digital form? How can they communicate clearly in that manner?
Yeah, I would say number one, establish interpersonal trust whenever you can. And we do that by rapport building. Some people hate small talk. I say, don't think about it as small talk. Think about it as connect talk. Because if we're connected, by the time I have to ask you for something or get something from you, I'm not going to be wondering who we are. Because
Right.
whenever two people are connected, I always becomes we. So step number one, establish that interpersonal trust. Step number two, make sure that you do not bury the lead. We're really kind of all impulsive, want to know from the get-go, what are we doing here? What are we talking about? So don't kind of bottom up and lead people along. Let people know from the get-go, even from the subject line, what is this about? Your subject line should really give me a feel and a picture of our end goal. You want to make sure that you speak in imaginative language, right? Because whenever we are not clear, we are making our audience and our listener do the work that we did not do. So make sure that I can picture what you're saying. We even use that saying every day. I don't see what you're saying. Or we say, see what I'm saying?
See what I'm saying? Yeah.
Clearly, we're not talking about our visual, our physical eyes. So make your language so that people can really see it in their mind's eye easily. And then you want to make sure that your message has a really clear order and structure to it, so that people are not wondering what came first, what came next, So it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle. You want to make sure that you're presenting all the pieces in a total picture, and you're not just dumping a whole lot of information in people's laps and leaving it for them to put it together.
Right.
And also, you want to track the emotional tone. The sooner the better to transition from written communication to oral communication. If you feel like there's misunderstanding that is not easily resolved with maybe one follow-up, or if it seems like the tone is getting tense, or if you're confused.
Wow. You're right, because a lot of times there's so much that can get missed in the message, right? Through digital platform or emails or text messages, there's so much misinformation or can be misunderstood in those type of messages. Like you said, you leave it to other people's perception on trying to figure out what it is you're trying to say, because then it becomes an emotional thing, because it's like, well, what do they mean? Because when I say emotional, it's kind of like, how is this message making me feel? Because sometimes it can come across as what they're talking about, or make you feel some type of way. It can come off a negative, which is a feeling, right? It can come off negative instead of positive. And then, like you say, you can talk too much or say too much, and then you lose the message within what you're trying to say. So that's a good point, what you said. There's so much in this communication when it's face-to-face, also when it's written down. I imagine there's a type of strategy when you do it that way in the digital world, because then you can kind of explain yourself when you're face to face. It's easy to read body language because they're right there with you. You can see and feel the emotion with the person right there. There's no emotion in text or email. So you have to be careful, like you say, on your presentation with the subject line, how you say it, because the person on the other end can receive it totally different.
And that's why that element of rapport building is
Yeah.
important, because the more you know somebody, the more accurately you are going to just determine whatever the tone is. If
Right,
you've
right.
known somebody for years, you read that text, and not only do you hear their voice, but
Mhm.
you know their intentions. So that's why
Exactly.
relationship building and connectivity is so
Mhm.
important.
There you go with that word. Connectivity. You have to stay connected to the person, you know, or
Yep.
get connected to the person, even if you don't know them, right? This is good stuff, Michelle. That's good stuff. So, what about meetings? We're going to talk about meetings. You know, people have struggled with presenting in meetings or speaking up in meetings, um, like in a business setting or a corporate setting.
Mhm.
So, what strategies can you give someone to feel more confident when to have an impactful meeting when they're
Mhm.
speaking to
Well,
someone?
if you're leading the meeting, you want to make
Yeah.
sure that the end game is established from the beginning, because that
Okay.
helps to chart the course. Similarly, as I said with emails, you want to make sure that you're not burying the lead. So
Hmm.
why are we here? Why is this worth our time, and what are we going to do during our time together?
Hmm.
So everything I do in my work isn't just about the act of communication, but also the individual life experience of the communicators.
There
So
you go.
that's why I start with doing a personality assessment. That's one of
Mm.
my certifications in DIS certification. So if
Okay.
someone has more of that dominant or director mindset, you want to make sure that you're sharing that conversational floor so that you can hear all voices at the table,
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
make sure that you're checking your ego and not making it about yourself, but
Hmm.
also knowing that that quiet person
Hmm.
is probably more observant and they see more nuances than that more extroverted person.
Girl, that is so me. You just explained me
Which,
to a T. I am so observant because I pay attention. It's not that I'm quiet and I don't have anything to say. I'm being very observant and I hear everything that's going on in this room. You know,
right.
so that is a wisdom trait I think that a lot of introverts have. So it's like you have to be careful of the most quietest person because sometimes they can be the most dangerous person because sometimes they have the most knowledge in the room. You
Oh,
know,
absolutely. And
uh,
even to use that word dangerous, like don't
right,
see them as a threat, because
right.
sometimes we're talking
Hmm.
about those dynamics,
Yeah,
that observant and intuitive person may come up with this really unique perspective, and
right.
somebody might be like, dang, why didn't I think of that? Think,
Exactly.
think of them as we are all valuable team members.
Yes,
You
yes.
need them all, because you can't just go with the quiet person, because they're going to hold on to the ideas, and then
Correct.
can't
Correct.
we can't
Correct.
do anything with muted intellect
Correct.
or muted genius, right?
Yeah.
I will.
I usually get excited with the quiet people such as myself because
Oh,
in
absolutely,
the end it's like you looking to them because you know they're going to have something to say, right? Because they
absolutely.
soaking it all in. So I want to hear what the quiet person has to say right now,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I was doing a workforce development workshop in Baltimore, and I
Uh-huh.
set my keys down and I didn't know where they were. And I said, let me ask the quietest person in the room, because I know she was probably watching me and she knows it. Sure enough, I said,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
said, did you happen to see where I put my keys? She
Hmm.
went, yep,
Right
they're
on it. They be
right on it.
right on the
Yeah,
spot. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Don't
That is
don't
so funny. So
don't see
funny and
people.
so true. Yeah.
Yeah, don't see people as a threat, see them as a team member. And a
There
lot
you
of what I
go.
do, it really goes in personal relationships as well as professional dynamics. And
Yeah.
it's true in our close romantic relationships as well. It's a thing of, even when conflict arises, it really is not us against each other, it's us
Mhm.
against the problem. But I wanted to go
Mm.
back and make sure I talk about all the other personalities in the room. So you have that
Yeah.
dominant person, who needs to share that conversational floor, but we also need their leadership to make sure that we're going in the right direction.
Mhm.
Because the next person, that high energy, that
Mhm.
inspirational person,
Mhm.
they want to make sure that everybody is connected. They
Mhm.
want to
Mhm.
make sure that there is harmony, which is
Mhm.
important because we need to be cohesive as a unit.
Yeah.
But the inspirational person does that, but
Yeah.
it's that directive personality that's going to move that cohesiveness forward, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that inspirational person needs to not mute it, But at the same time, when that more dominant person says, okay, we need to get back on track, we
Yeah.
don't need to dismiss that. That is needed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have that supportive personality who is another, who could potentially be, I should say that, another quiet one who really is the backbone, right? So
Mm.
that director might be the person who's in the forefront, or even if you think about it as a performer, that performer is on the mic, but that performer isn't doing anything without the writers and the producers.
Right,
So
right, right.
yeah, so that is equally as important, and they might have some insight on some nuances in terms of the inner workings of things that
Mhm.
need to be heard. And then lastly, there's that more conscientious type or cautious type who
Mm.
is going to make sure every I is dotted, every T
Mhm.
is crossed.
Mhm.
And just as slowly as I said that, that's
Mhm.
just as slowly as they move sometimes. So even that person in their
Yeah,
genius,
yeah,
they might need that inspirational person to say, all
exactly.
right,
Yeah,
yep, that's
yeah,
right. But we need to get this going. And then they have the energy, but the direct person is going to put
yeah.
form to the function and say, okay,
Mhm.
let's go forward. So hopefully you imagine all those people in the room, and
Yeah,
I've told you how different personalities can self-reflect and self-manage, and
right.
also how we can see everybody as a necessary team member, right?
Mhm.
Even when their personality is different from ours.
Right, right. You know, everybody has a part in this, and everybody's is important. Every voice matters, every story inspires, right? That's the theme of this show. So
Mhm.
it's almost like constructive communication because everybody brings something to the table and everybody needs what that person has,
Mhm. Mhm.
to make it become effective, right?
Mhm.
So that's Michelle, you are right on, and no wonder you are in doing what you're doing. I'm learning so much from you, and I'm just so glad our audience is listening to these techniques and just the overall conversations and how the flow should go. So hopefully it will help and bless somebody here, because maybe they're going through some things, or maybe they're having challenges at work with communication with their supervisor or their boss or even a coworker, and wondering how can I communicate better or what am I missing? What am I not getting? So this conversation is going to help somebody. I know it's helping me,
Oh, thank you, Dr.
I
LaDonya.
know it's helping me. So
And that's
Michelle,
all I'm here for, really. But go ahead.
absolutely, absolutely. So let's shift gears a little bit
Sure.
with the corporate setting. Let's shift gears on the education because I know there's different dynamics for the corporate
Uh-huh.
education because education is a variety of ages,
Yes.
because you have to communicate even with the toddlers, kindergarten through college, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Absolutely.
so it's a huge part of student success, I believe.
Mhm.
So in your work, what role does speech language pathology play in the classroom?
All right. Well, speech language pathologists are diagnosticians and remediators of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Those are the four
Okay.
modalities of
Okay.
communication.
Uh-huh.
So when we're talking about what role does it play in the classroom, we
Mhm.
also support the execution of that, whether or
Mhm.
not um, the student is able to process directions. And
Okay.
a lot of times we are doing the detective work of understanding the why. So you
Correct.
might have a student who doesn't really accurately answer where questions. You might ask them a
Mhm.
where question. They might give you a person
Uh-huh.
as a response. Then I'm looking at, okay, is it a thing that they don't understand the question itself, or are they having issues with categorization? Because
Mhm.
categorization is the main way we push information into long-term memory because our
Wow.
minds are association machines,
Mhm.
associations and predictions for the purpose of social cohesion and to keep ourselves safe, right? So
Right.
it's a thing of what are the underlying processes that are preventing this student from meeting benchmarks and academic goals. So
Wow.
that is our work in a nutshell.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Because there's different levels of language to the student,
Mhm.
and then a lot of times they wonder why they're not getting something. Is it the relationship and the communication between said student and teacher? You know, not all teachers teach. I'm not going to say not all teachers are great teachers, but some students do not comprehend the teachings of the teacher, right? So it might be that barrier of the communication language, right? Maybe it's that. So, and it's important that young people they express their self-expression. And then there is, this age bracket here. So how can parents and educators support the students in strengthening their communication skills when they have these type of issues or these barriers? How can they help support and strengthen the students' communication skills?
Well, with the educators, I'm going to use the C word again,
Come
connection
on.
first.
All right.
Connection first.
All
I
right.
have 4 children, and
Okay.
one of them is emotionally intelligent, way beyond me. A lot of mine came through experience and learning. He just came here like that, it seems. And me knowing him and his personality, I would tell the teachers up front, this child, you're not going to get anything from him until you establish a relationship with him. I said, now I know him. I said, so I'm telling you what works for him, so you don't have to take months to figure it out, because I didn't want them to think that he wasn't knowledgeable. Right. We talked about being that observer. That's the thing about the observer. People also don't know what you know. That's the flip side of that.
That's
and
so
then
true
you're
too.
making them wonder, because the narrative that we do not express gets assumed and created for us. Right. So that's how I was trying to mitigate that. So that is step 1 for teachers, is to make sure you have that connectivity with the student. And teachers they're passionate. Teachers get up and they want to make a difference in students' lives. So sometimes in that there comes a little personalization, like, is this student just doing this with me? Or I see them talking to Mr. Joe with no problem, so they just don't want to talk to me. Well, then once again, get curious and ask why. That doesn't mean that there's something that is wrong about your approach or even wrong about your personality. It is, what is the we of it? Because the same thing applies. I always becomes we. And although the teacher is leading the relationship, there's still that somewhat emotional connection that really has to be in place first in order for learning to take place. Because number 1, an anxious mind cannot learn. We need to have the state of a curious mind in order to be able to learn. Because an anxious mind is going to just be pursuing psychological safety and survival.
Wow.
So if I think you don't like me, that's all I'm going to be thinking about. I'm not going to be thinking about that lesson.
Oh, our minds can really take us there. That's for sure. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. But that goes across the board. And I know we're in a education lane right now.
Right.
But what we don't mature out of, educate ourselves out of, we really do take into the next space. Which is why I have a job in corporate.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So to the second half of your question about we talked about teachers, about the parents, just making sure that you have that relationship with the teachers and not just say, here, this is your job. Because teachers, they're with your kid 8 hours a day, and they really have a big impression and influence on your student, and you want to know that person.
Yes.
And you want to support that person.
Absolutely. That's why I believe, I'm glad you brought up the parent, because I was going to bring up the parent too. Like these parent conferences, so the communication between teacher and parent is so important. It's not just between teacher and a student, it's with the teacher and the parent. Just like you said, you express to the teacher, this is your son, you know how he is. So you letting her know this would probably be the best way to communicate effectively to get the best out of him to make it work for both of you. Right. So that's some good stuff.
Dr. LaDonya, can I build off of this is my son? So here's the other part of that.
Okay.
Parents also have to be open when people see another side of our kids.
Yes.
Because what I communicated was the version that I knew.
Yes.
Sometimes, listen, if we're in a household that does not permit expression,
Yeah.
doesn't allow us to explore curiosity,
Yeah.
that makes that child have to mask. And then
The environments are different. Yes. Yes.
then they might go to school and let it loose. So you're going to say, Junior does everything I tell him to do at home.
Yeah.
He follows directions. Well, you
Yeah.
threatening him. You're doing all these things
Mhm.
that they cannot do at school. And then they
Mhm.
get to school and they're letting that energy loose. So
Mhm.
yeah, be open to both sides. So
Mhm.
definitely say, yeah, I know how my son typically functions, but if
Yes.
somebody comes to you with another version of your child, don't
Mhm.
be so quick to say, not my child.
Yeah. Oh, that happens all the time. Oh, he wouldn't have done that. He don't do that. But there is other side to people. So because they're blinded by the other side because of how they interact with them at home in their own environment. And like you say, they go elsewhere and what? You say what? Let loose. You know, so this other version of who they are. That is so true. That is so true. And then you wonder why they are who
Yep.
they are. So do you really know your children?
Yeah. And I feel like you want to give them a little rope
Yeah.
under your watch so you can
Right.
see what's in them.
Right.
You know,
Right.
we have this fantasy as parents that they are
Yeah.
just going to take everything we have downloaded and follow the script. Not
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
They are one of one, just like we are.
Yes.
Right? And you
Yes.
want to kind of be that observer and give them a little
Mhm.
rope so they can have that self-expression and say,
Right.
let me see what you would do left to yourself.
Right. Right. You want to give them some freedom for their own self-expression for them to learn because they have to learn. They have to get out there and do it themselves. Because
Yeah.
once they hit that door outside the door, you have to trust that they're doing the right thing for the right reason and that you gave them everything that they need to perform and function out in that real world. You know.
Indeed.
Exactly. Michele, we're going to continue on this conversation. This has been very enlightening, very informing. So just hang tight until we hear a word from our sponsor. What if success wasn't just about what you achieve, but who you become? At I Win Global Enterprises, we empower visionaries, gladiators, and leaders to unlock their full potential. Because winning isn't just about reaching the finish line, it's about embracing the journey. The journey of self-discovery begins with the right guide. Infinity, Eternity, and Serendipity is a transformative trilogy designed to awaken purpose, illuminate the path, and embrace the unexpected miracles of life. Your destiny is waiting. Are you ready to step into it? I Win Global Enterprises, where inspiration meets action and dreams become reality. I Win Global Enterprises. Live life inspired. Lead boldly, win authentically. All right, everybody, welcome back to Girl Talk. If you have been following us up to this point, you have been gathering so much information and valuable information. Michele is such a delight. She's very knowledgeable. As you can see, she just knows her stuff about this communication and connecting component of communication. So let's talk about a lot about what people struggle with, difficult conversations. So whether it's addressing workplace conflict, personal conflict, setting those boundaries, right, Michele? Because that's another form of communication is setting boundaries or handling disagreements. This is becoming what we talk about personal relationships, you know, with a loved one or with a spouse or with a significant other. Some of those situations can be very, very uncomfortable to where a lot of people can either one, shut down,
Yeah.
or two, just argue just until the end of time, you know. So how do you suggest people navigate those communication challenges through those difficult and challenging conversations to kind of bring it back in together and come like meet in the middle, so to speak? How do you bring difficult and struggling conversations between people um, to bring it in the middle to like hear each other? I know this is a crazy question, but how do you manage? How can people manage that and come together versus being apart in conversations?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say first thing is to remember whatever you avoid typically grows. So instead of being scared of the conversation, be scared of the consequences of not having the conversation. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Another thing is we want hard conversations to be easy. By definition, They are
Mhm.
hard conversations, and
Mhm.
they're not going to feel good. They
Mhm.
might bring emotional pain, which also brings physical pain. And our body, as I said, or our minds rather, they're associations and prediction machines. So we're
Mhm.
thinking about how it's going to feel, right? But we
Right.
got to shift our mindset to, as I said, what's going to happen if we don't fix this. So,
Mm.
and that's anywhere, right? So you want to have
Mhm.
those conversations, and you want to lay out what's observable first. Like
Mhm.
what is it that we both experience from a five sense experience? Because we
Right.
like
Right.
to start out with the emotional story and tell you what you did and what I'm not standing up for. But if you
Mhm.
need to have a hard conversation with somebody, you say, "Hey, I noticed the past 5 times I emailed you, I didn't get any kind of response." And
Yeah.
then instead of accusation, have a bit of wonder about that.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
is there anything I should know? And
Mhm.
then you say, because it also gives me the interpretation, and you state what your interpretation is. Right?
Mhm.
But you
Mhm.
also want to give them a chance to give their side of the story, because once again, this is about a collective truth, not coming to
Yeah.
tell you off and dumping my perspective and my version,
Correct.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's, and hopefully in everything you do, it's intentional and meaningful, and there's a reason that you are together, right? So
Mhm.
there's some kind of shared goal, shared outcome that needs to be the focus
Mhm.
while you're talking about your individual perspective and your individual experience. So that kind of is a quick and generic answer when we're talking about the work
Mhm.
world. When
Yeah.
we're talking about closer relationships, especially romantic relationships, we
Yeah.
want to also think about whether there are conversations that we haven't had, right?
Mhm.
And I referenced another R&B song earlier, so I'm gonna
Uh-huh.
go ahead and stick with that, because sometimes we have what's the Isley Brothers song, "Footsteps in the Dark," right?
Oh
So
yeah.
we really think about or thinking about our reaction to what you just said. But if
Yeah.
I am holding in other conversations, and even if we think about the aspects of wellness, like
Mhm.
physical wellness, spiritual wellness, financial, etc., if we are not connected or
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
transparent conversations about other elements of wellness, then
Right.
we're going to hold it. And then
Mhm.
that conflict is in us. And that's
Yeah.
the other thing about avoiding conversations, because that conflict will live somewhere. So
There you go.
it may live in you and manifest
Yeah.
in resentment, manifest in blaming, manifest in telling yourself all kinds of stories.
Mhm.
Or we can put it on the table, put all these pieces on the table, and together put this puzzle together and assemble it.
Exactly. Because in personal relationships, it's not about you against me or me against
Right.
you. It's us trying to tackle what that it problem is. So
Yeah.
let's come together and figure this thing out instead of
Mhm.
holding each other and it's all about me and I want you to hear me, I want you to feel me, but not consider the other person may have the same issues or even more that you don't even know about. So
Right.
you talk about footsteps in the dark. I don't want to be walking on eggshells with you. I
Right.
might have to
Right.
be, so sensitive that you're so sensitive that I can't really come and talk to you about what I see, what the issue is, or hear me out. That listening part, that connecting part, like you say, hear each other out first and then be willing to hear the other person, whatever that is, right? And then come together to tackle the issue, not tackle each other, right? So I think that that's really important. So there's a distinct difference between communication in corporate, education, and then personal relationships or romantic relationships, But the
Hmm.
bottom line is, Michelle, is what? Tell us what the bottom line is between all of those entities, corporate, education, relationship. The bottom line is what when it comes to communication or effective communication between all of that. I know the common denominator is yourself. So give
Hmm.
us what some other steps that bring all that together between those entities of communication.
I would say make sure that you're laying that foundation so that when you have to have a hard conversation, people
Yeah.
do not wonder how you feel about them.
Yeah.
So that should be established. If we
Okay.
have a problem and I already know that you love me and respect me, then that is
Yeah.
not going to be put into question. So
Right.
we need to feed that daily with what they call micro validations. Right. So that is
Microvalidation. Okay.
microvalidation. So that
Mhm.
is in the literature cited as a potential antidote to microaggressions. But those
Okay.
microvalidations, they feed and they validate so that I don't have to wonder how you feel
Mm.
about me. Like I said, when we have a hard time. So
Mhm.
that goes from communicating with kids so that when you
Mhm.
have to correct them, they know that it is about the moment and not about them,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
also workplace and also romantic and professional and
Mhm.
excuse me, personal relationships as well. So when you're talking about what is the common denominator, make sure that you're staying connected, that
Mm.
you're having transparent conversations about everything that affects us. That's why I
Yeah.
talk about those footsteps in the dark, whether it
Yeah.
be finances, whether it be other social relationships,
Mhm.
across families, etc. Make it an easy place to have hard conversations and be grateful for them. It's it's
Wow.
almost it's almost like it's almost like a checkup. You want to go ahead and have those checkups so
Yeah.
that if by chance anything is going awry in your body, that you
Yeah.
know sooner rather than later, so it is so much easier to heal. It's an analogy. When we don't do those checkups, when we're not transparent, we don't have that level of knowledge what's going on within our bodies or within our relationships, when it
Mhm.
grows and becomes a pathology, then
Mm.
it's a lot harder to heal.
Right.
Like
Right.
stay healthy so that you can stay out the doctor's office, or if you got to go to the doctor's office, it's not hard to
Mm.
heal.
Stay healthy, y'all.
Talk about it.
It's all talk about it. Talk about it and connect with it and communicate that thing out. I'm telling you. Okay, so micro validation. You see how that done
Yes.
stuck with me. I am going to do some research on that because some things stick with you. And so we're going to end on that micro validation. You guys make that work for you because it is so important in all relationships that you have, interactions that you have with your kids, your family members, your loved ones, your coworkers, any type of communication that you have on a regular basis, even communication with yourself. Give yourself a self checkup, right?
Oh,
It's
that's
not
the
just
first. That's
right,
the first. That
right,
that is first. Aside
right.
from, I'm saying this as a faith-based person. Second to God, the most important relationship is with yourself. Because
There
number
you
one,
go.
what you're guaranteed, Doc, is you're gonna
Mhm.
be with you for the rest of your life.
You know,
We hope that on that last
yes,
breath,
yes,
you're with loved ones. That's no guarantee, right? At
exactly.
the end of the day, when we lay our heads down,
Yes, it
you
is.
are still with you.
At the
So
end of the day, it's you against you.
that, yeah.
That's it. If you don't have yourself together, you no good for nobody else. That is so true.
Amen. You see, you ain't need me coming on. You just said it in a nutshell.
Right, 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 right. Michele, this has been such a powerful conversation. But before we wrapped up, what other advice you want to give to listeners about mastering communication? There's so much more, and I know you have so much more in you. What else? What you want to leave our listeners with when it comes to mastering communication?
I would say make sure you're not personalizing everything. And if someone gives you
Mm.
some
Come on
feedback,
now.
take that look at it as a perspective. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We compare it against the psychic pain or the emotional pain that the words are causing, but
Mm-hmm.
see if there's some merit to it. Don't be so offended that you miss an opportunity for
Mm.
growth.
Right.
Right. So I
Right.
would say, the big ideas would be don't personalize everything. And
Mm-hmm.
also, if it's somebody means you well, give them the benefit of the doubt and
Yeah.
just get curious and ask some questions.
Yeah.
And connected to micro validations,
Mm-hmm.
just be transparent
Yes.
and not always transparent about what goes wrong. Be
Mm-hmm.
transparent about what you're feeling about people, which is one of my intentional strategies about the season that we're in. If I
Mm-hmm.
see somebody do something that's really kind, even if it's not to me, it's like,
Uh-huh.
that was really kind.
Yeah. Yeah.
That I saw that look on that person's face when you did A, B, and C. Keep
Mm-hmm.
loving on people.
Mm-hmm.
Let people know what their value is in this world.
Wow. Yeah. That is so important. It's all about grace. It's all about grace. Thank
Yeah,
you,
it is.
Michele. You have been so great. Oh my gosh. I think I need to have you back on here because all we do is girl talk. It's communication, right? So I may have you come back on here so we can dive a little bit more deeper into communication because this is what we have. as humans. This is the way of the world. This is how we, communicate and stop conflicts with each other, because everybody has such different personalities and perspectives about and views about things, right?
Hmm.
And the last thing you want is division, So how do you unite people with the art of mastering communication, effective communication, right?
Hmm.
As human beings, when it comes to humanity. So, Michele, before we leave, please let our audience know how they can reach you and connect with you. Give your social media handles, whatever they need to get in. What's the best ways to get in touch with Michele?
I'm going to make it real easy. Y'all see Michele Morrissey down there. You should be able to find me with that on Facebook. But
Uh-huh.
if it doesn't lead you to me and seeing my picture, then it's Michele Gilliam. The middle name
Mhm.
is Gilliam. So connect with me on Facebook and inbox me. Let me know that you saw me on Girl Talk so we can microvalidate Doc and we can let her know what great difference that this platform is doing, and let her know we want her to keep doing it. We want her to keep elevating voices and
Mm.
just being a voice for good out in this world when we need it more than ever. So connect with me on Facebook, Michele Gilliam Morrissey.
Wow. Thank you, sis. I really appreciate you. I appreciate your heart for sharing with us today. And thank you for being just such a joy and energetic spirit today.
Thank you.
Such eye-opening information. So I got so much out of it. I cannot wait to have you back. So Girl Talk family, remember the communication is what is your superpower. So use it towards your advantage in helping not just yourselves, but other people as well. It is so important to have effective communication with yourself and outside into the world with everybody else. So make sure you do that with people. It will open doors for you. It would open a world of blessings for you to just do the right things for the right reason. And it's all about how you express it through your communication. So I am your girl again, Dr. Donya Yvette. Thank you for tuning into this episode. And if you enjoyed this episode, this podcast today, please be sure to like and subscribe it and leave us some comments and so we can get in touch with you. Leave Michele a comment. I'm sure she will check in and answer those questions that you may have, because it's all about communication, you guys, and it's all about connecting. So make sure you connect with her on the information that she just gave, and just leave us some comments so we can connect with you and stay engaged with you on Girl Talk. You can connect with us. We are on social media on Facebook. You can reach us at Girl Talk on Facebook. That is quote unquote Girl Talk on Facebook. And then you can reach us on Instagram at Girl Talk on IG. So Girl Talk on IG. All right. Thank you so much for having this conversation, Michele. Again, you have been a pure joy and such a blessing. Thank you again, my dear sister. And to everyone else, stay connected with Girl Talk, where every voice matters and every story inspires. Are you ready to share your story, insights, and wisdom with an audience eager for inspiration and would like to be a guest on Girl Talk? Simply email us at info@iwinglobalinc.com to inquire and book your spot. Be sure to use the hashtag #GirlTalkGuest. Talk with you soon.
Maybe crazy. Oh, but you still amaze me.